What's up everybody, I hope y'all are having a wonderful day. I'm Anthony. On today's video I want to go over with y'all 10 of the easiest vegetables or crops that you can grow in your garden. Alright, so before I get started I wanted to go over with y'all a couple rules that I'm going by to make this video. That way we can all be on the same page and everything will go by a lot smoother. So the first rule is, this is going to be according to me, my opinion of growing things as a southern gardener. Now, I'm in Zone 8A in the state of South Carolina, so my experiences will vastly differ if you live anywhere else outside of my zone. So if you live in Texas, California, Pacific Northwest, whatever, I guarantee you your experiences will be completely different than mine. But don't let that stop you from watching this video, because I guarantee you there is a few things that you'll be able to take away regardless to what zone you may be living in. Another rule I put in for this video is going to be, I will not talk about any vegetable or crop, because let me be honest here, they're not all vegetables. A lot of these are considered fruits. But I will not talk about anything I've never personally grown myself and something I haven't grown multiple times. So test trial of growing something does not count, and if I've never grown it myself, then I will definitely not throw it in this list, because that's unfair to the viewer to try to talk about something I've never done before. Alright, and finally I will be making my judgments on the ranking of this list based on one of three variables. The first one's going to be pest pressure, the second one's going to be on disease resistance, and the third one's going to be on the overall maintenance of the plant. So those three variables are what's going to determine how I place things on my list. Alright, so now all that is out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with my number one. The easiest thing to grow, period, point blank, is going to be garlic. Hear me out. If you've never grown garlic before, I highly suggest you go ahead and figure out a plan to start doing it this fall. It is absolutely the easiest thing you could possibly grow. Garlic is one of those things where you plant it, forget about it for 8 to 9 months, and then harvest. What could be easier than that? There is no pest pressure in my area, there is no disease pressure in my area, and you literally don't have to stake, trim, nothing. You just plant, cover with a mulch, and harvest. What could be easier than that? If you've never grown garlic before, it is extremely easy. I did a whole video on it. I will put a link up here or down in the description below so you can check it out. Brings me to my number two easiest vegetable to grow, and that is going to be the carrot. A lot of people associate carrots with being a cold weather crop, and yes, they really are, because they can easily take cold weather, even frosts. However, it's not just a cold weather crop. You can grow these things starting in the spring or summer and leave them in the ground till the first frost. When you get that first frost, they will taste sweeter. However, down south, the way I grow them is I plant them in the fall and I harvest them in the spring. That way they're sweet enough already and they keep growing the entire time. We don't get snow here, and even the 20-degree freezing we get doesn't hurt the carrot tops. So that's why I like to grow carrots when I do. So when it comes down to pests, I get no pests. When it comes down to disease, I get no disease. And there is absolutely no pruning, staking, nothing required, because hey, it's just a carrot top. That's it. So that's why that's my number two. Okay, so number three, hot peppers. Now I know some of you may be thinking, wow, hot peppers are really hard to grow in my area. Down south, they're really not. The only issues that you may run across with a hot pepper is when it's over 95 degrees, you might start getting some blossom drop. But until that point, there really isn't an issue. They grow in all kinds of conditions. They can handle the wind if you give them some sort of support. So in reality, all you do is plant them and just get ready to harvest after so long of a wait. You really don't have any pest problems. I think it has to do with the capsaicin in the peppers. A lot of things, even tomato hornworms, don't really like eating hot peppers. If you have a sweet pepper next to it, they'd much rather go after that versus a hot pepper. So you don't really have any pest problems. You don't really have any disease problems because they don't grow bushy enough to really hold in a lot of that water. Not to mention a lot of the peppers that are out now have been hybridized or bred enough to the point where the disease resistance is already in there. And when it comes to pruning, I never prune my peppers. I know people say cut the tops here, cut this here, and watch this, and you'll get more peppers than you know what to do with. But I never do any of that, and I still get more peppers than I know what to do with. I literally just put them in the ground, put a tomato cage around them, let them grow up in those, and congratulations, you got all the peppers you want until the first frost kills them. So that's why I put that at number three. So number four, radishes. Now I'm sorry I don't have any radishes to show you. I'm filming this in June, so all the radishes are been out the ground for about 2 months now. However, radishes are definitely one of the easiest things to grow, but in my location you're going to only want to grow them in the springtime and in the fall. The best part about radishes, not only can you eat the radish root itself, but you can also eat the radish tops. I personally don't like them. I give those to chickens, but it's nice to know that you can. But in reality, when you have a normal red, what is it, red globe radish, they take 35 days to grow, so the short time is the best benefit here. Even with some pests, you don't have to worry about losing a lot of your crop because what they do eat is usually too slow to outpace the growth. So when it comes to pests, slugs are a bit of an issue, but I have no disease problems, and because it's a root vegetable and they only grow so big, there is no maintenance. So you just plant, then harvest and eat. Okay, so number 5 is going to be sweet potatoes. If you live in the South, you should probably know that growing sweet potatoes is one of the easiest things that you could possibly grow. There is one drawback though. If you live somewhere else, it might be more challenging because sweet potatoes like it hot. So that is probably one of the best reasons why they're so easy to grow down here. In the middle of summertime, June, July, August, sweet potatoes thrive on the heat. So when everything else is kind of stalling out, not growing, ready to be harvested, you can put your sweet potatoes down and call it a day. You put them down, you wait for the vines to go, and after about 100 days, you're able to harvest. So definitely look at sweet potatoes if you're in my area. When it comes down to pests, there is one big one, and that's going to be deer. Deer love the sweet potato vines. You can also eat the sweet potato vines, the leaves, but even in my garden, my 20 by 20, the vines grow so long, they always spill over on the outside. And as soon as they spill over on the outside, the deer absolutely snack them. So that's why they hit my number 5. When it comes to fungal diseases, I've never had an issue with those. And again, because the vines can grow kind of crazy, the maintenance is kind of up there. If you want to put them on a trellis, so be it, but they're going to run wild, so there's a little bit more maintenance to do with them versus something else lower on this list. Sorry, I had to move over here. The wind is absolutely gnarly today. But number 6 is going to be okra. If you live down south, you definitely need to be looking at growing okra because the heat and humidity of the southeast is very reminiscent to the part of Africa where okra comes from. So it grows extremely well here, extremely easy, and when everything else is kind of stalling out, just like sweet potatoes, you can put down your okra. It'll germinate quickly in the heat, and congratulations, within 70, 80 days, you're gonna start, harvesting your okra, and that thing will get tall, extremely tall, and you'll be looking at 1 to 2 new, things of okra a day once the heat of the summer really starts kicking in. So when it comes down to the ease of growing, I have it listed as my number 6 for 2 reasons. The first issue is ants. Ants love going into the flowers and absolutely doing some dirty things to them flowers. Doesn't affect the fruit production, but there are ants all over it, and it's never the black ants, it's always the fire ants. So that's a number 1 issue. Number 2, you have to worry about stink bugs. Stink bugs like eating on the fruit, and when they do eat on the fruit, you can tell because the fruit, instead of growing straight, will start growing like this. Yeah, make all the jokes you want. It'll start growing like this, and you're gonna start wondering why you have bent pieces of okra. That is because the stink bug has been feeding off the sweet juices. So when it comes to pest problems, since you do have those issues, I had to put that back at number 6. Fungal issues, disease problems, haven't had any issues for me. And when it comes down to maintenance wise, the only maintenance is you gotta harvest every single day. If those spears get longer than 3 inches, they're gonna get woody, and that plant will slow production dramatically. So you have to keep on harvesting in order to make sure you're getting a harvest. So if you slack off, if you go away for a couple days, go on vacation, whatever, you're really hurting your okra plants. That's why the maintenance issue is actually there, because if you're not harvesting, you're not getting okra. Number we on 7. Number 7 is going to be beets. Now, if you've never grown beets, hear me out, because I never grew beets either. I never really liked eating beets. I had pickled beets every once in a while, no big deal, but once I started growing my own, I realized how much I actually do like them. So that's why they made a place in my list, not to mention the fact that they are pretty easy. The only drawback, the only reason why they're in my number 7 is because they are a cool weather crop. Being a cool weather crop, I cannot grow them in the middle of the summertime. It is just too hot here. They get tasting kind of funny. Don't even want to try, especially because in the middle of summertime, the pests are insane. Slugs will eat the crap out of the tops, the beet tops, until there's nothing left. And I'm talking about over the course of like 2 days. So the slugs, the other worms will absolutely destroy them. The Japanese beetles love them. It's just a really good idea to grow all your beets in the fall if you're in my location. So that's why it's hit my number 7. So pest problems are one thing. Fungal issues, I've never had a fungal issue with them, so I don't really count that. No viruses, no diseases. And when it comes to maintenance, there really isn't any. The only thing is you have to make sure you're thinning them just like you would with a carrot, but that's not even that big of a deal. So beets, number 7. All right, so number 8 is going to be green beans. Now, I thought about putting these a little higher on the list, but there are a few things that you have to worry about when you're planting them. I've been growing green beans for so long, I really don't think of these issues, but as a new gardener, these are some of the issues that you're going to have to know about. Number 1, you have to determine if you're going to grow bush beans or pole beans. The difference being a bush bean is going to grow into a small, compact bush, and a pole bean is going to want to grow up something. So you're going to need to put in a trellis. That's going to mean you're going to need some sort of maintenance item. So that kind of puts a tick on the maintenance. When it comes to pests, depending on when you plant, you can avoid a lot of the pests, but when you first put your seeds down, you're going to have an issue with slugs. Had a problem here, had a problem in there. The slugs were absolutely destroying the seedlings as fast as I was planting them. So if you're planting in the springtime, that's something you have to deal with. As they get older, you have to deal with leaf rollers, leaf rolling little caterpillar worms, but they never really kill the plant. And Japanese beetles do enjoy them as well. But that's usually the issue with pests. Disease, they might get a few issues of like fungal disease, but nothing's ever going to stop them from growing. You're just going to notice a little bit of yellowing on the leaves, maybe some spots, but it doesn't stop the plant from producing for me. Usually it's what the heat is what kills them, or they just run their regular lifestyle. And then when it comes to maintenance, like I said, you got to put in a trellis and you got to harvest them. One thing about beans is if you stop harvesting, the plant will stop producing. Bush beans usually give you one crop, but pole beans will keep producing as long as you're picking. So if you stop picking, they'll stop producing. So you got to walk out there every single day, pick, 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 pick. That way you're getting more beans. The reason why they made a place on the list in the first place is because they're so prolific. You will get so many beans off just one vine if you plant a pole bean. So I definitely suggest if you are a new gardener and you've never tried growing beans before, you do it because they are worth it. You just got to know a few issues, a few bugaboos to make sure that you're successful. Okay, so number 9. I don't have any to show you right now, but I have many times in the past, and that's going to be sunflowers. The sunflowers I have planted are only about this tall because the ones I planted previously were all knocked over from a really bad storm we had about 2 months ago, so I had to replant. However, when it comes down to sunflowers, sunflowers are extremely easy to grow. They are almost one of those plants that pops up regardless of location in the United States. They're pretty easy to grow all over the country, so that's why I'm adding this to this list. When it comes down to pests, yes, you have problems with aphids. Aphids love the leaves, slugs love the leaves, and so do Japanese beetles, but they still produce. They just might look kind of ugly. When it comes to diseases, yes, you might get some powdery mildew on the leaves, but again, nothing's going to stop it from growing. It just might look a little funny. And when it comes to maintenance, there really isn't any maintenance except the fact that they might fall over if you get heavy windstorms, so that is kind of a bad thing. So you might want to consider staking them if you live in an area with high wind, or considering when you're planting. You can't plant too late down south because we get hurricanes here, so you don't want your sunflowers to get just to the point where they're about to produce and all of a sudden a hurricane blows through and knocks them all down, which might happen this year because I had to replant, so we'll see. But, oh, I did forget to mention squirrels. Squirrels and birds will destroy sunflower kernels right as they're about to get to the point where you're going to want to pick them. So if you get to that point, put a bag over them, like a paper bag, to make sure that you're getting all the sunflower seeds, because the birds know before you do when they're ripe, and they'll be out there, trust me, lickety-splickety. So bag them up if you want to make sure you're keeping as many sunflower seeds as possible, but they still make a place on this list at my number 9. That brings me to my final number 10. I thought about it, and there's quite a few things I wanted to put here. I'm actually going to put those into its own little category, the ones that I wanted to put here. But number 10, I'm going to go ahead and say winter squash, and more specifically 3 types of winter squash. Now, if you grow squash down south, you're going to most likely run into 2 problems. That is going to be squash beetles, and that is going to be the squash vine borer. They will wreak havoc on you. So much so that I couldn't grow summer squash for years because the squash vine borer was so bad. This year, luckily, knock on wood, they bypassed me. My zucchini is still alive, but usually it gets to the point where I harvest maybe 3 or 4 zucchini and then all of a sudden dead. Squash vine borer kills the whole plant. So I put winter squash here, more specifically 3 kinds: the butternut squash, the acorn squash, and the Seminole pumpkin, because all 3 of those, the stems are hard enough to where if you do get the squash vine borer, they never are able to get into the stem and kill the plant. So those 3 survive very well here. My favorite personally is going to be the butternut squash because it's very big for what you get, but acorn squash is really good too, and so is Seminole pumpkin. Seminole pumpkin just takes a little bit longer to grow. I enjoy growing Waltham butternut squash. That's my brand of choice. I've been saving seed for years, and it works very well in this climate. So when it comes to pests, squash beetles will do a little bit of damage to some of the leaves. Just make sure you're going out there and looking at them. Flip up the leaves. If you see little black dots, those are the eggs. Use some duct tape, some tape to peel them off, or just clip that leaf. That's what I usually do, and you don't really have that big of a problem. Encourage beneficials also, you don't have to worry about that big of a problem. Diseases, you're gonna get a few fungal diseases. It's gonna start with the leaves yellowing, but by that point the vine is usually so long, you can clip that leaf off and you'll be okay. So nothing really damages the plant to the point where it's not producing. That's why I'm kind of giving that a pass. And finally, when it comes to maintenance, yes, you can grow up a trellis if you want to, but I usually like to put them in the ground or put them in a raised bed and just let them run all over the place. Because when they do, you can kind of let them do their thing. They're going to need to get pollinated because squashes need a male and female plant. That's another thing about maintenance. If you're not getting bees and you're going to hand pollinate, I did a video of that. I'll put it here. But if you don't, hand pollinate and the bees do it for you, the best part about winter squash is you can leave it. It's a winter squash. You leave it on the vine until the whole vine dies, and then you can harvest, and that thing will be good for like 6 months. So I definitely suggest if you live down south, you look into doing butternut squash, because that will be a winner for sure. Okay, so I want to do the 2 honorable mentions. I think they deserve to be mentioned in this video. That's going to be lettuces, more specifically the Paris Island romaine lettuce, because I've had really good experience growing that here. The only drawback with the lettuce is you will have to deal with some pest problems, especially slugs, chewing holes in the leaves, making them look kind of nasty, and rain is also a factor as well. Let me explain, because when you grow a romaine lettuce, the leaves grow up. So when you're eating, you're going to want to make sure that you're peeling every leaf off and washing very well between with water, because that dirt from the rain splashing it up in there is going to be kind of a pain in the butt. That's, I think, the main reason why I didn't add this on my list. So never really have any issues, disease issues, but because it is a cold weather crop, it likes it cool, and if it's not cool, it's going to bolt or die. So leave that for spring and fall only. Again, that's why I didn't make the list. Okay, and the second honorable mention is going to be, all right, so the second honorable mention is going to be asparagus. I didn't want to add that into this list because asparagus is a perennial, and all the rest of the list is going to be mostly annuals with some biennials put in. So I didn't really feel right putting in a perennial. I did my own video on it, on Perennial Spotlight. I'll put a link to that up here and down in the description below if you would like to watch that. But asparagus is one of those things that's also very easy to grow. The only drawback is time. It takes a long time to get going, but once it's going, you're good to go, and you can harvest a lot for about 3, 4, 5 weeks before you have to let it go to build strength for the following year. So the only real issue you have to deal with, or I've had to deal with, has been asparagus beetles. Asparagus beetles like to overwinter in the stalks, so at the end of the year, it's a really good idea to cut all the stalks that are there and dispose of them far away. That way you don't have to deal with asparagus beetles. Fungal issues, non-existent, and maintenance. When they grow after you're done harvesting and you let them grow up to the fern stage, they usually get pretty tall, and they might start to slowly bend over into your walkway, so that can kind of be a pain in the butt. But other than that, really is no maintenance issues. So again, I wanted to put in my list, but I didn't want to put in a perennial, so that's why I left it off. Okay, so there you have it. That is my list. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? What works better in your climate? Please make sure if you're putting a comment down below, you let everybody know what part of the country you are in. That way, if someone happens to be reading these comments from that part of the country, it may help them a lot better than this video might be helping, because they don't live here. So again, I would very much appreciate any kind of feedback that you can give me down below. I think that would be excellent, especially to start a discussion on what we can all do to make sure we're putting ourselves in a better position to grow our own food, because I think if you do that, you're really winning in all levels. So I hope this list helped you. If you did, or if it did, please do me a humongous favor and give me a thumbs up. It really does help me out with the algorithm, and I would very much appreciate it. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and I'll catch y'all later, okay?